The illustrious Jabba bids you welcome. I'm going to regret this.
I'm Pete Mitchell. He's Peyton Jones. And this is the Church Planter Podcast, brought to you by Church Planter Magazine.
Hey guys, if you haven't checked out Logos Bible Software, for sure check it out. They're going to make you look smarter than you actually are. They've got Bible tools, things from the original Greek. You don't even speak that, but you can quote it now. You can quote Spurgeon, you can quote all the greats because it's all in there, and even have some fancy little anecdotes from church history. Head on over to logosbiblesoftware.com.
I still loved it when the guy that runs that thing, I can't remember his name, but he calls me up and he goes, yeah, we've never given you a commercial. And I'm like, Peyton's been just making it up as he goes. It's all Peyton's fault. Listen to the podcast. Listen to the podcast.
I've totally been making it up. You know, I keep hitting him saying, hey, give me some copy. And he hasn't. So, you know, that's
so he gets what he gets. It's his fault.
Hey, man, if I were making a Logos Bible Software commercial, that's what I would tell you.
And that is what you tell us.
Those guys are everywhere, man.
Are they?
I was on a cruise ship once and they were there. They like popped out like, hey, Logos, try us out.
What cruise ship were you on?
Well, okay. So, yeah, a little clarification there. It was a free cruise I was given for being a Baptist pastor.
Well, first of all.
And it was a Duck Dynasty
First
cruise.
of all, we need to address the first part, which is, what would you do to become a Baptist?
So here's a funny thing, though. It was a Duck Dynasty cruise, and nobody, none of the
Was
cool
it pretty
guys.
much like all crawdads and
no, like none of the cool characters were on there. Like you didn't have Jace, you didn't have.
You had Mountain Man. You had.
We had like I wish we'd had Mountain Man. If we had
You don't
Mountain
even get
Man,
Uncle Si. You get like Mountain Man, and
we didn't have Sai. We didn't have Jace. We didn't have who's the main kid, the one
Willie.
that runs the company.
Willie.
We had the dad though.
Oh,
That dude could preach.
Dude, that's the best one.
Well, he was. He preached, dude. They kept opening up like parts of the ship for him to preach on, and people were coming to faith. It was rad.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that dude's an evangelist. I'm telling you.
Oh yeah.
Preaching the gospel on a cruise ship. But yeah, they were like, hey, it's Duck Dynasty. I don't think I went to anything other than there was like a Sunday morning to hear him preach, and I went to that. Other than that, I was like, oh, these aren't the good Duck Dynasty people. I'm not going.
If this is your first time turning into the Church Planter Podcast, oops. If this is your second time turning into the Church Planter Podcast, double oops. But if you're a regular listener, this is what we like to call smack talk. It has nothing to do with church planting, so deal with it.
If you're a second time listener, you're probably here going, you know, I'll give him that first one. It's got to be better second.
Maybe it'll get better. Maybe. Nope.
You hate to disappoint you.
Well, I don't really care. So,
well, last week was on sin. If they came back, they're waiting for the gospel now.
Woo! By the way, I was going to ask you, what is today's topic?
Today's topic is how much time should a minister spend outside his office or hers?
Did you just go liberal on me?
No, hey, you know, ministers are male and female nowadays. We've had a podcast on that.
I know.
Once you're in team leadership, it's like, hey, you know, what's your problem?
Well, you know, all I got to say to that whole thing is,
walk on the road. Walk right side, safe. Walk left side, safe. Walk middle, sooner or later, get the squish, just like grape. Here,
Church planting.
same thing. Either you,
Church planting do.
yes, or
Church planting do.
no. You,
Church planting do.
guess so. Just like grape.
I love that one.
You can't even tell it was dubbed.
No, not at all.
No, I did it very professionally in my studio. You can't even tell.
The day you sent that over to me, I was like cooking tacos with the wife in the kitchen, and I'm like losing it. I'm laughing so hard as I'm listening to that.
It's because you weren't expecting it.
No, not at all. Who expects? And then you're like, oh, I'll have it cleaned up and done professionally. I'm like, no, not at all.
I was gonna go on Fiverr and have someone do like a real Miyagi one.
No,
that would have been
way.
great.
No, this is better. This reminds me of that 300 movie that you redubbed, and it was like all in another language, but you like added all these church planning subtitles. And
you train church planners when the guys come down and they're like, they go to stop them. They're like, no, you can't do this.
It was hilarious.
And the guy says something that sounds like the devil. And so I have him go, this is the devil. And he's like, what are you going to do with the church planners? And he goes, I'm going to take them with us, like the Apostle Paul. And I'm going to train them up on the way. And then they all the characters look at each other like he's nuts. It's so good.
It was amazing to me how well the words fit what was happening on screen. Like when I saw it, I was like, how did that even happen? Like, who thinks of that? Like someone, I didn't watch the State of the Union this last week because I was at the range. That's more important to me. And someone took, I kid you not, man. Someone took the State of the Union and has Trump singing some Spanish song, and it is hilarious. Like,
what?
They dubbed it, right? And so it's him with his movements.
You gotta show this to me.
Oh, the reason why I couldn't is because you know how like now you can put like titles above your videos, and someone put profane words. They were like, "What the f did he say?" And I was like, "Dude, I can't repost it because it says that." But it was hilarious. I'll give you that. It was absolutely hilarious because it looks like he's singing a Spanish song perfectly.
That's hilarious. Perfectly. Yeah, I love those dubs, man. I love when those guys do the bad lip reading. Oh, it's just so good.
Yeah. What's happened with you this last week? What do you got to share on?
You know, I show up to this thing every week now, and I can't remember jack.
Yeah, I do know that.
I mean, that's pretty much it. I'm thinking of the topic. I got a head chock full of stuff that I want to talk about, but I can't remember anything for Smack Talk nowadays. I had my intern here, and I told him you just need to shadow me because he's over from Wales. And
who is it?
It's Ben Biscoe. I don't think you know him. You might have met Ben.
I know who he is. I probably met him at Refuge when he visited there a few years back.
Yeah, he might have done. I think he came out last year. So Barry came out, intern, wrecked his world, changed his life. And he told Ben, he goes, "This is the most exciting thing I've ever done. You got to do it." So Ben came on out, and he's been shadowing me for 1 or 2 days a week. Other than that, we've got him with Ruben, Chris Langham. He's been over with Paul. So we're just kind of keeping him, shuffling around some of the churches.
You got him over with Paul Percy?
Yeah.
Oh, well, that'll teach him how to church plant in Wales for sure. Stanton is pretty much equal to Wales.
He's actually Oxfordshire, man. Oh, well, Stanton is a lot like the steelworking town that I went to at first. Like,
it is.
Yeah, it is, man. I mean, I was just looking through pictures yesterday because Banksy painted that picture, like, on the corner with the kid catching the snowflakes in his mouth. But it turns out you go around the corner, it's a dumpster on fire and it's ashes.
Oh, gross.
Have you seen that?
No.
Yeah, so Banksy's, it's not his most recent. I think there's one more. Oh, okay. All right. Yeah, he's like the most famous graffiti artist in the world right now. And nobody really knows who he is. He's got a secret identity, but he tags stuff and pops up. They've done like whole museum wings of his stuff. Like he's had an exhibit. Recently, he had this is pretty famous. You might have seen it, where they auctioned off the only time he's ever put one of his works up for sale. And as soon as the gavel came down and someone bought it for crazy amounts of money, it immediately started shredding itself.
Oh, yeah, I heard about that.
By remote control. So that's Banksy. So he painted a picture like a walking distance from my house where I lived.
There was a shredder in the frame, and when the
Yeah,
guy
there's a
bought
shredder
it,
in the frame.
it automatically shredded.
It was remote control. As soon as he said sold, zzz, it started shredding itself.
Yeah.
Which made it even more valuable.
Well, and see, that's the stupid part about art. It made it more valuable.
Because that piece is now hands down his most famous piece.
Because I got to tell you, I've got a shredder here in my office, and I shred stuff all the time, and I can't get anyone to give me any money for it.
Depends on what it is. Could be quite valuable. But, it's funny. I was just walking around that street, and I was looking at pictures of it yesterday because I was putting something together for a newsletter. And I just looked at it and went, man, that was a really rough neighborhood. I mean, you just look at it and you're like, that just looks like a rough place. But it was a rough place,
Right now, you look like a lumberjack. We said that before we started the podcast. Because you got your
You like this
flannel
look
shirt
on me, don't you?
Honestly, because I'm a product of the 90s, the 80s and 90s, yes. Like you go, yeah, look, I'm metrosexual. I'm like, no, you said you're millennial. That's what it was.
Whoa, not the same thing.
Not metrosexual.
We all know
actually,
I am not a
millennial. Millennials and metrosexuals.
Careful now. Careful, Mitchell. Careful.
They are the same. Come on.
Nope.
Dude.
Not going to go there. Nope.
Millennials and metrosexuals are totally the same.
Shovel, hole, deeper.
Nope. I stand by that one, man. I'll challenge any millennial to prove me wrong. All I gotta do is show them a picture of a metrosexual. I go, you're the same. You're the same. No, but you look like a lumberjack, and you're like, oh, I'm a millennial. And I go, no, you look like grunge right now with your facial hair.
But I got a mustache. Whenever I grow a mustache,
and
even though it's a Fu Manchu.
Yeah, you got to tell them you've got the Paul Tuttle Sr.
It's the biker thing, right? It's like the big,
Paul Tuttle Sr. with, what do you call this part? It's like the soul patch goes down into
I don't know.
To the goat.
I miss my chin thing though. I miss that.
Where it's just the whole chin.
Yeah, my thing I normally I've had for like 6 years. Andrew told me yesterday, no, I like what you got now. So I'm like, okay, yes, but I miss that old thing. I'm
still waiting for puberty to kick in so I can actually grow some decent facial hair. It hasn't happened yet. Man.
Wow. Yeah, that's rough, dude. Keep shaving, dude. That's all I can tell you.
Keep shaving.
Keep shaving trucking. What's there, and it'll grow back stronger.
Every once in a while, I go, that's it. I'm shaving it off. I'm going to grow in a fresh batch. Right? That's what this recent thing is. This was shaved off like a week ago, and I barely got stubble now.
You had a goatee when I first met you.
I've had a goatee most of my life, and then in the last couple of years, it's gone.
A second grade picture was you looked way older than your age.
I've gone old, man. I it's not red anymore. It's white.
Dude, all I know is I'm like running and working out now, and I'm feeling it. I remember last year kind of going, dude, when did I lose the ability? And I'm sure I said this on the podcast, to jump on and off things. Like that's what I noticed, because I went to go jump on and off something the other day and went, oh, okay. All right. Didn't know I lost that superpower.
What did you go to try to jump on?
I don't know, because I got kids, right? Like I was probably jumping on some rock and trying to ricochet off something and, air skateboard, something like that. And nope. Could have been a car bumper. I don't know what it was, but it was like, oh, yeah, that took a bit of effort, and we almost didn't recover from that. I was like,
yeah, millennial, you are not.
Dude, it's like running and lifting, like those things, okay, I'm going slower and it takes a while to get it back. That's always normal. But jumping on and off things, what happened there? So I've actually been jumping on and off of almost everything I can think of right now. I jump on and off things right now because I figure I need to get this back.
So that's it. You're trying to train back up.
Yeah, dude. I can't go down without swinging. I want to be like 85 years old in the nursing home and just like look at my nurse and go, see that nightstand? I can jump on and off that.
I'm pretty sure there was a Seinfeld
you.
episode on that.
What?
There's a Seinfeld episode on that.
What?
Yeah, there's a Seinfeld episode on that, except they're not trying to jump. They're trying to pick up stuff. Mandelbaum.
No way.
Yeah.
Oh, I need to see it. I have clearly not watched enough Seinfeld in my life. I thoroughly love that show, but I've probably only seen the equivalent of like 20 episodes.
What I think is funny is when you watch that show today, you realize that most millennials, I'll use them as an example, would not understand half of the stuff on the show. Like the telephone. I'm like, dude, they've never seen a phone like that before. Like, It's got a cord. They don't even know what that is.
That's hilarious.
But that's the show we grew up on, and that's how things have changed so much.
Do you remember the one my buddy always quotes this one about where George buys the salad
The
that
big
they're
salad?
bringing to
The big salad one?
Yeah, and Elaine takes the credit for it.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, thank you so much. And she's carrying it, and she's like, oh, of course. And it burns him the entire episode.
Yeah.
You know, he bought the salad, but she took the credit for it.
Actually, I bought the salad, right? He does that thing with his hands, right? You know?
Yeah. He starts trying to fix it.
Yeah. Oh, it's
and
great.
It just looks so petty.
It's so great. I love that.
How do you write that stuff?
I don't know. The one that I never really liked, but I kind of look back on it now and I find it kind of funny is it was in the first season. It's when they go to the Chinese restaurant and the whole episode is them waiting in line.
I love that one.
And they're trying to grease the guy and he's like, thanks.
Yeah.
It still makes him wait. It's just like, and then they finally leave. And as soon as they leave, they call him out.
Oh, so good.
Yeah.
So good. The very first one I ever saw was the one, and I was like, oh, I got to watch this. Like, this is a good show. And then I moved to Wales, and they didn't show it over there. Like, it didn't hit the British public like it did here. And Friends was huge over there, but Seinfeld, no. But I remember watching the episode where they opened the muffin top shop.
Yes.
And they're like, what are we going to do with all the muffin stems? And they're like, oh, we'll give them to homeless people. And the episode ends with this angry mob of homeless people with trash bags full of muffin stems. Cause they're like, everybody just loves the muffin tops. I mean, you don't even need the stem, so they just bought a bunch of muffins and ripped the stems off and opened this business. And the homeless people are like, it's like Frankenstein is how they do it. Like they're banging on the castle gates and pitchforks and all that. And they're all mad. And the best line, I always thought about this when we were at Refuge Long Beach, where they go, we may be homeless, but we're people too. We want muffin tops.
Oh, I don't think there's probably a better description of America than that right there.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter how bad things are. We could be homeless. Yeah. But we got standards, man. We want the muffin top. That's right. America for you.
That's so funny.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, hey guys, welcome to the podcast. What about you, Pete, man? What's been going on in your life?
I'm trying to think.
You're not allowed to talk about guns. Can't talk about guns every week.
Why?
You're like, what? Well, okay. We did the underwear for a long time. We did the cars for a long time. And we did the guns for more than double each of those. So you have to have a new hobby now.
I told you I'm getting into competitive shooting.
That's pretty cool. But
I've gone every night this week to the range, baby. I'm an addict.
So you are going to compete?
I'm going to compete. Yeah. I told you that's going to be my ministry.
That's rad.
I'm going to go
Did
after,
you see that? Did you see that shot I sent you from the Old West where the dude's like, you come around this church again. He shoots at two guys. He's like the new preacher. And he's got his 6 shooters on. It's a cowboy movie.
I don't remember it.
I need to resend that to you. All right. Check your messenger. It's on your messenger. It's a fantastic clip.
Yeah.
He's like, you come around my church again, it'll be more of the same.
That's
He's like, I'll see you all on Sunday.
Yeah. I've gotten quite a few invites to the come learn how to protect your church.
I know.
And I know you have a serious problem with that. I don't, actually.
I don't have a problem with it. I think it makes sense to me on one hand. It does. You always
No, I
wanna
understand
protect
both sides. I
innocent.
totally get both sides. Protect your church with firearms. But I think if you also look at your church, like I look at Refuge Long Beach, and I look at that and I go, okay, on any given Sunday, majority of people in the church not saved versus saved. Like
Right.
when you're in that kind of a mindset, so then if a shooter came in, I mean, you're directly sending people to hell. They're not saved. So yeah, I would rather that guy, he misbehaved. He made his choice. I need to stop that threat. So that way these other people can have a chance to
I get
hear
it.
the
If
gospel.
someone were mowing my church down, I'd want a Pete Mitchell right there for sure. Like no doubt.
Dude,
but
the problem is Pete would be
weirds
running.
me out-
Pete would make sure his own family was safe and then run because Pete knows
you guys are on your own. You
if
should have
he
concealed
pulls
the carry.
out
I
his
told
gun,
you.
he's going to jail, and he's not going to jail.
So here's the thing, though, right? Like what weirds me out is the advertising. Like I'll never forget. Anna and I were back from Holiday, and or we were not back from Holiday. Sorry, we were on furlough from the mission field. Totally different thing. And we turned on the radio, Christian radio in Southern California, and no comment, but we turned it on, and there was an ad on there, and it was basically something to the effect of, hey, and I've heard this one not long ago. I don't turn Christian radio on often, but I turned it on, and it was something like this. Hey, what do you think your frown lines communicate to people? And it was for plastic surgery.
Oh, that's
but
awesome.
it's telling them you got to fix your frown lines because you're actually a bad witness. It actually said it's affecting your witness for Jesus. And I was like, okay, I'm done. Get me out of here. I'm done. I can't take this anymore. I felt like Jesus getting ready to cleanse the temple. Like, I'm going to go down to that radio station. I'm going to find those people.
But the radio station isn't claiming to be a church.
You're just goading me now.
I'm just saying, you're going after a business whose sole job it is to make money, and then we're upset that they make money.
Oh no, I'm not mad that they're making money. I'm mad at those kinds of ads.
I think you should then go after the advertiser.
Well, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And here's the thing: is really I don't know, man. Like there's other things we could be advertising. What you and I used to advertise was good stuff, right? We were advertising church planner training, bivocational, and you would have guys light you up for that. Like you got all the brunt of that. And the thing is, like that was actually the gospel. But what you would get, so it's okay for all these guys to advertise that, but you would get the heat. And I remember at the time thinking, but like, how did they'd be like, well, you should offer this for free. And I remember you telling a couple guys like, hey, I know you work, but do you work for free? And some guys were doing ministry for free, and I've done ministry for free, and I would do ministry. Like, you don't have to pay me to get me to do ministry, but I think your point at that time was, look, this isn't ministry. This is actually how we feed our family.
None of those guys were doing ministry for free.
Yeah,
that was the difference too. What did I say to him? I go, so the worker is worthy of his wages if it's you. That's when he's worthy of his wages. But otherwise, no, he's not.
And people will say like, oh, well, it's so far away from first century. Well, no, because Paul says, hey, Timothy, don't muzzle the ox. Like if a dude's doing ministry, particularly if he's laboring in word and doctrine, give him double honor. So training falls into that. If you're training others, there's no better way. Like, for example, someone had to pay for Jesus to train the 12. In Luke chapter 8, first couple verses tell you who did it. And it was actually someone from Herod's palace, and Mary Magdalene, who, she had acquired some wealth by some unmeanly gains, shall we say. But Jesus' ministry was funded. Supporting 12 guys, that's the kind of thing that, so somebody pays somewhere. And even Paul, like when Paul was going around and, he was tent making, how is he supporting those guys? I guarantee you he was getting them tent making.
Probably, if that was his skill set.
Yeah, he was getting them tent making, and I doubt, I would almost imagine he was putting them to work in the business as he was doing that. Now, why did I launch into that? I don't know. When I have to weigh the difference between getting people who are you looking at that passage? I can see.
Yeah, no, because I remember I put it in one of your videos that we showed. Yeah, Luke 8. And the 12 who were with him, and also some women who had been held of evil spirits and infirmities, Mary called Magdalene, from whom 7 demons had gone out, and Joanna, the wife of Chuza, Herod's household manager, and Susanna, and many others who provided for them out of their means. Somebody had to pay. Yeah. It doesn't say that somebody had to pay. That was Pete Mitchell, just to be clear.
Yeah. Quoting Peyton Jones.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember putting that in.
Hashtag copyright Peyton Jones.
I remember putting that into one of our videos because it was like, hey, you can be one of those ones. If you're making money and not doing ministry, then why don't you fund the guys who are? Right.
Well, and so, and that's what we call gospel patronage, and we've talked a little bit about that before. We could talk about that today, and yet that's not what I want to talk about. But I do want to talk a little bit about George Whitefield, who had a woman who funded him, someone named the Countess of Huntington, who was an English duchess. Are you
moving into the topic?
Huh?
Are you moving into the topic?
In a minute, not just yet. Little preemptive strike here, but basically she was responsible for planting 28 churches, and she wanted to see them raised up. And when I say she planted, it wasn't that she directly, but she was there for a lot of them. But she was funding gospel ministers. She was telling Whitefield, train up people like yourself, or I will fund their training, and we need to multiply you. And from that came 28 church plants out of her means, out of her wealth. And she was a hugely instrumental woman during the Great Awakening in England. I mean, massive. She basically funded, who paid for Whitfield's ministry? So these are things we don't think about very often. It's a really good book if you guys want to read more on that. It's a book that kind of blew my mind this year called Gospel Patrons by John Reinhardt. And we are going to have him on Hardcore Church Planning. If you don't listen to Hardcore Church Planning, check it out. You got some cool guests on there. And we will get him on there talking about that pretty soon.
Now are we going to start the topic?
Press the button, my friend.
Woo! Uh-oh.
Great Scott! It's time for this week's topic.
Let's get down to the nitty-gritty.
So whenever you say that, I always kind of half anticipate that you're going to go, Great Scott! Remember those days?
Dude, I've actually got a really funny story that I don't think I can share on the podcast, but it's hilarious. It happened when I was listening to the radio this one time. And I can't share it.
Don't share it.
I can't. But it's
time for the Great Scott. It's
everyone
time for
just
this week's
needs to trust. It's really, really funny.
We must take your word for that, Pete Mitchell.
You do, because it's so inappropriate. It's not vulgar. It's just inappropriate and funny.
Oh gosh,
and so stinking funny.
Oh gosh, can't be as bad as that time we were at Rick Warren's church meeting with his dudes, and your tom went off.
Wait, oh dude, that was really funny. Okay, so I gotta tell me if we gotta cut it. But here's the story, because I gotta say it now.
You gotta cut it. You're just creating work for yourself, pal.
But I gotta tell it to you because it's so funny to me. So this radio station, when I was growing up, they would do this. You know how radio morning shows always do funny antics and get the listeners to do stuff.
Who was it?
So what they would do is they were like, they want you to call into the radio station from your job, and your job was to pass gas into the phone at your job.
No.
Yes. And they're like talking to this one guy. And he's like, yeah, I'm ready. I'm ready. And the next thing you hear him go, he goes, uh-oh. Oh my gosh. Oh. So anyway, we just had a Skype out right after that story, which I was crying. I was laughing so hard.
Oh my gosh, that was funny. And I got the best. I will post it on Facebook. I got the best picture of Pete killing himself, laughing so hard. He's punching the desk.
Oh my gosh, that's what I always think of whenever I go, uh-oh.
Now that I have context, that makes it even more funny. Uh-oh.
It does, man. It does. Oh,
we should do hey, what episode is this?
I think we're 304 or 305.
Wait, we passed 300?
You were gone for 300.
Oh, we didn't celebrate it?
You were gone. You were literally gone. You dialed it in. You said, here's a sermon, put this on.
Oh man, here, we gotta do episode 305 then. Our next week's episode needs to be it needs to be our 300th episode, a little bit late.
Yeah, perhaps.
Because I think we could tell our most embarrassing, well, maybe that's a bad idea.
Oh man.
Better to tell other people's uh-oh stories, isn't it?
Oh man.
So, okay, well, cool. So getting into this topic, let me set this up a bit. How much time should I spend out and about versus in my office? The context of this is, as you know, getting ready to plant, and I'm forming my core team. So I'm in a series of having meetings and interviews and just, a lot of meals and getting to know people, hearing their hearts. Cause, sometimes people will be like, dude, I hear you're planting. Let's get together. There's guys trying things in the area. And so I'm in the place where it's like core team building. I'm in my gathering phase for my core team. And one of the guys who would kind of he would be kind of like I guess a Timothy. One of the guys I trained, right before I went to work for NAM, I ran something called Train Station, and that, was amazing. Paul Percy came out of that. Other Josh Shinnok, Bo Moffitt. I mean, a lot of the people that I would consider now, people that are doing pretty cool things. They were there. And so one of the guys there, we're going to be planting together. And as have been talking, he keeps saying, mission, that's what I want to, I don't feel I did that as well during my first rodeo. And so he's handing a church off now, but he's saying we didn't really have that element defined. That wasn't our focus. And I can see now how had ministry or mission been our focus, it would have been amazing. And so we were talking this week and he was saying, I really want to have that defined, what our, what mission is going to be, what we're going to focus on. And I kind of shared that, when I plant, even though I train people to have their mission figured out, normally when you're talking to people and that really makes sense, they're already on mission, they're already in mission. Otherwise, you're just kind of telling them the importance of mission. And so I said, when I'm actually planting, it doesn't work like they teach you in the training, where they're like, have a clear, compelling vision. And, and those are really good things to know. Those are helpful tools. But just on the ground for me, all I'm saying is it doesn't work that way. And I try, I train in this stuff. I train others, and I train others how to train others in it. And still, when it comes to me church planning, it's like the Lord just going, just walk, kind of like the Jordan, just put your foot in the water and it'll recede, and take another step and it'll recede a little bit more. That's always been the way that God leads me. I just do the next thing. I just do the next thing that God wants me to do. It's not because I don't know how to plan. It's not because I don't know how to do all that. That's just how it works. And so we were talking about this with mission, and I said, the way that mission tends to work, I've found, is not that we as a group come together and say, this is what we collectively are going to do as a mission. Like when we went to Refuge Long Beach, we met in the park. That was, okay, we're going to do that. But we didn't know that in advance. That was just a pleasant surprise. And then as we did that, one of our women said, hey, there's a bunch of homeless people hanging out around. What if we, could I bring like some apples and string cheese and boil a big bowl full of eggs? Yeah, you could do that. Sure. And as we were on mission on the way, things developed. And if I were to kind of draw a series of concentric circles where they overlap in the middle and you call that mission, one of those is divine opportunity. Like you can't create divine opportunities. You have to wait for those. And so when I'm planting, I'm very much praying. I'm very much asking the Lord to go before us, be with us, come along behind us, sowing, reaping, watering. But how do I say? I'm setting this up very poorly, and I'm keenly aware of that. But I'm almost preaching something first. But what I'm trying to say is when it comes down to it, when I'm training, what I'm really wanting people to do is get out there, right? And so if I were training you, I often will look at congregations and they're like, we don't know how to reach lost people. And I think, well, of course you don't, because your pastor doesn't know how to, because no one equipped him to do it. No one trained the leaders of the church, because we don't do that. We don't train them. Whitfield wrote once upon a time that I did more good 3 days preaching on my father's tombstone in the yard of the church than I would have done 3 years in his pulpit. And what Whitfield was saying was kind of what became his life motto was, I had to get outside of the church. In order to truly be effective, I had to do things out there. And so what I was telling my compadre the other day is, look, this is how the mission normally happens. One person kind of, cottons on to something and starts doing it. Kind of like that lady that said, could I just boil eggs? Could I just do apples? And other people see it and join in. We would have never had the insight to say, hey, guys, what we're going to do is go to Smart and Final or Costco and buy a bunch of apples and string cheese and boil a bunch of eggs. And you were there. So, I mean, you can comment on this, but we would not have known, because around every bend, there were twists and changes and things happening that we weren't prepared for. And I would say it happens every time like that.
I'm here.
Any thoughts on this, Mr. Mitchell? You're looking at guns, aren't you? You're like, ooh, I want that one. Google.
No. Interestingly enough, where my mind went, I don't know is necessarily the direction that you are going with this topic, but I'm going to share it anyway, because that's what I do. I don't care where you were going, Peyton. Here's what I'm going to share.
No, that's okay. Because, this is a broad topic, because it has to do with everybody just doing what God's called them to do on mission. And then that's where the church finds its sweet spot.
Well, part of what I was thinking about is, okay, years and years ago, this is, I don't know, maybe 15 years ago. As a financial planner, I was working at this one company, and basically I had just read a book about this mom that, in order to save her kid from being taken away from her because her husband had just died, she had to make $1 million, and she had 90 days to do it. And so I remember looking at that, and I was like, hey, what if we took the same idea and we applied it to our business? Because, we were all straight commission only. And I'm like, what if we set out this goal? We're going to make $1 million as an office. We're going to, but we're going to do like 4 or 5 of us here in the office. And in 90 days, cumulatively between all of us, we'll make $1 million. And, so I went to the branch manager, and he was like, oh, this is a great idea. And he wanted to get everyone in the office in on this. And I was like, yeah, but it won't work. And so we did it anyway. So we ended up with like 25 people in the office, and, we had this big meeting on a Saturday, and here's the goal is $1 million over the next 90 days. And here's what this means you need to do as an individual, and blah, 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 all this stuff. Right. And of course it didn't work. And the reason why it didn't work was because there were too many people going after that goal. And when there's that many people, it's too easy for someone else to go, well, it's all right if I don't do it because, someone else is going to pick it up.
Right.
And that's what happened. And I was kind of thinking about that in terms of, starting a church plant and all that stuff. It can't, I don't know if this is, I don't think this is necessarily the direction you're going, but let's say, the object is, hey, we're trying to reach our community. But if you do not have a solid core team, and by core, I mean literally a core, not everybody, not 20 people, not, 30 people, but a core that is this is what our goal is, and we're going to make this happen. I think you can get lost because then everyone's just well, it's all right. Billy over there, he's an evangelist. He'll go out and invite, the 3 people and plus another 3. And I was going to do those other 3, but that's okay because Billy's going to do it. That kind of a thing. And I think you start to lose some of that potency. Yeah. When you try to get too many people in on, this outreach goal. I don't know if that makes any sense.
No, you're right. We had a couple guys, both of them ex-cons. It was Ruben and another guy, Big Anthony, and and they were like, hey, we want to go to a bar and just talk to people about Jesus. Now that would not have been right for everybody, right? But that was, they were like, hey, are you cool with this? I said, of course, as long as you guys go 2 by 2 and you're watching each other's back, and we don't want to find you out there, drinking shots with strippers or anything. But if you're going to a bar and you're going to talk to people about Jesus and you're sharing the gospel, and that's your thing, go for it. And that, like I said, that was just something they felt because they're that's where I would have been, before I knew Jesus. And I needed Jesus, and I received Jesus. So, for different people, there are different things. And that's what I kind of brought up, with my partner was, one of us will just start doing something. Someone on our team will just start doing something, whether it's going after foster families that have lost their kids, right? Andrew's particularly burdened for that. She's volunteering for the county of San Diego to go get involved with those families. These aren't the kids. These are the broken families that have lost their kids. And I got to be honest, that's hard. That's hard because sometimes they've lost their kids because they put their kids in the hospital. Sometimes they've lost their kids because, they go to jail. Sometimes they've lost their kids because they can't stop doing drugs and alcohol. That's hard. But, I think those are the people Jesus went after. Or maybe I should flip that around. Those are the people that went after Jesus. So we've got to go to people. Now, what I say to the whole church, hey, everybody, you all need to be volunteers and join. No, but here's the thing. The original topic was how much should you spend your time? And when it comes to training ministers for the gospel, I was speaking to believe it or not, a bank sales team and marketing team the other day. And they were asking hey, what, because I was telling them a little bit about the ministry that we do. And they were like, well, do you think the average seminary is prepped for this? Are they training guys to do this stuff when they come out so they can do this kind of church plan? I said, definitely not. But it's so you got to back up and say, why? If you read what Jesus says, if you read what the apostles did, if you study church history, you'll realize that, Jesus talks about in the sheep and the goats, he talks about the low hanging fruit. I hate to put it that way, but it is. It's the broken people out there. He says, I was in prison and you didn't visit me. Why is every seminary student not going to prisons and training there? That's a no-brainer right there, right? Why is every seminary student not going to hospitals and signing up for chaplaincy. Why? Like, I could just keep going down. I mean, I was, for me, these are all like, I was on a psych ward. That's kind of like prison ministry. And I was a nurse working in a hospital. So these are areas that I was taken inadvertently to train me for ministry. Then I ended up on the factory floor, which is kind of what Whitfield did when he was locked out of churches. A lot of people don't realize that Whitfield didn't have the proper license. They barred him from getting a license at one point, and because they didn't like his message of the gospel, this new birth, and they thought he was nuts when he said, "You must be born again." And so he went to King's Colliery outside of Bristol because he's like, "Well, I got to preach. This is like locked up." He was spending like hours a day praying, and he can still remember like the day that like the preaching gift came to him. And he said it was like overnight. And people like Ben Franklin would come to hear him and say, "Oh my gosh," and famous actors, and they'd say, "I've never heard anyone speak like him," kind of like they said about Jesus in Matthew 7. Never any man spoke like this man. And it was an anointing, and he knew it. He was like, I remember the day it happened, and I went and preached like all these sermons, and it was like as if I had been preaching all my life. And it was just this mastery of it that came from the Spirit of God. And anyways, but he said this in his early days. He said this. He said the next morning. This is actually the account of that. But then listen to what he says next on this topic we're talking about. He says, "The next morning, waiting upon God in prayer to know what he would have me to do, these words, 'Speak out, Paul,' came with great power to my soul. Immediately my heart was enlarged. God spoke to me by his Spirit, and I was no longer dumb. I finished a sermon that I had in some time before. I began another and preached the Sunday following to a very crowded audience, and with as much freedom as though I had been a preacher for some years. Oh, the unspeakable benefit of reading to the poor and exercising our talents while students at the university. Such previous acts are very proper to prepare us for the works of our Lord and make us not unapt to teach in a more public manner. It is remarkable that our Lord sent out his apostles on short missions before they were so solemnly authorized at the day of Pentecost. Would the heads and tutors of our universities follow his example, and instead of discouraging their pupils from doing anything of this nature, send them to visit the sick and prisoners and pray with and read practical books of religion to the poor. They would find such exercises of more service to them and to the Church of God than all their private and public lectures put together." And he says, "Thus God dealt with my soul." So, here he was 20 years old, and he's obviously, you can tell I'm going through Whitfield's biography again, and I'm just mining all this stuff out of it that I'm like, we've lost this. Like for me, one of the things that kind of sparked this was I started dipping into this because I'm putting together some training, like field training for core teams to do, like to actually get them out. And as I'm putting that together, I'm going, well, like I want them to have a practicum, but what are the parameters? Like what would a core team do? And then Matthew 24 came to my mind when I was reading this. Like, there we go. Matthew 24. Why are we not using Jesus just laid those out. You visit me in prison. You see me when I'm sick. You feed me when I'm hungry. You clothe me when I have. These are all things that all Christians could be engaged in regularly and just know, like straight from the mouth of Jesus, these are things I ought to be doing. This is what Jesus said will separate the sheep from the goats, is according to Keith Green, what we did and didn't do. Right? It's not what we said. It's not what we believed. It's what we did. That's the point of that. Is Jesus is literally saying, I'm going to separate them by their actions, which he's not saying you're saved by your works. Don't get me wrong. But he's kind of summing up saying, this is what my children do when they're in the world. But we're not training. Like it's no surprise that we don't do this or we don't see this, because this hasn't been shown to us. This hasn't been a part of our training. To me, I guess I just feel like I've had a major breakthrough.
Well, I think that it goes all the way up obviously we've been talking about this for the last 300 some odd episodes of most church planting.
304 to be exact.
Is that what number we're on? Whatever it is. But
you said.
I can't remember. Come on. But what's the point of planting a church? Well, I want to have 700 people show up my first weekend and 350 of them come back the second week. Well, those aren't unsaved people typically. Those are saved people looking for a different church, a hipper church, the new church, a church maybe my kids will go to, but it's not reaching the lost, right? So everything all the way up, what you're talking about has been jacked up in our whole viewpoint. I mean, you brought up in Smack Talk how, we had all these programs to help pastors be bivocational, and I would get pastors, telling me I should do it for free, telling me that, it's a shame that pastors have to be bivocational, that it should be all full-time ministry. That's the only real ministry there is. And it's like, how did we get so jacked up? How did we come so far from what Jesus said, from what Jesus did?
Right. Right. Yeah. I mean, we're in a time where we don't even recognize first century Christianity. I mean, that's kind of been a passion of mine, is to re-preach that and to keep sounding that gong. This is first century Christianity. This is why they saw what they saw, and every epoch of church history where God has expanded the kingdom of heaven has been a rediscovery of these things, right? So the Methodists, it's really interesting because when the Methodists came about, it was like a works-based theology. I mean, it was pretty jacked up. They were called Methodists because they had a method of, it wasn't a good method. It was a slam on them, and it was a derogatory term. And it was basically that they had a method to obtain holiness, which is pretty jacked up. Like we'd all agree theologically that's whack. But what they would do is they would say you have to get up at this time in the morning. You have to observe this many times in public worship. You have to, visit the sick this many times, on and on. You have to read this much of the Bible. And it was a methodical way of trying to, and they were called the Holy Club. That's what they called themselves. But John Wesley goes over to Georgia and gets wrecked. I mean, just gets broken and humbled and gets in all these conflicts with people, comes back and is, just not in a good way. Encounters the Moravians. He realizes he's all externals and not much internal. And he gets baptized in the Holy Spirit. And it all changes, Same with Whitefield. Whitefield has this powerful, this is a revival. This is what we call it. But there still was this, even though in the beginning they went about it the wrong way, there was this desperation and hunger for more of God. And you go back and you track that God didn't leave them with their misunderstanding, but they were responding to the prompts of God. Like they were being drawn to him. And that's kind of my heart for this generation. They came out with the statistic yesterday, the 50% of millennials, and I don't know if that was millennial Christians or not, but 50% of millennials believe that sharing your faith is wrong, like it's immoral, it's insulting and evil and wrong and shouldn't be done. And of course, we live in a climate now where if you make me feel in any way bad, or you make me feel less than, or, and of course, sharing your faith it's an absolutism. It's, I'm right, you're wrong. So to a millennial, to 50% of them, they think, no, this is evil because you're making me feel bad. And, we're at this place where I really think that the rediscovery of some of these things that Whitefield was talking about there, that's a game changer. Because we've talked about this before, Pete, that when you serve people, you earn the right to talk to them. I get that just some Johnny on the spot loudmouth trying to tell you about Jesus, maybe nobody wants that because they're like, yeah, cool, you tell me, but show me.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe. And so for church plants, that's kind of the deal for me. Like, no joke. Like, this in the conversation I shared with him, I said, as Andrew's doing that, I'll be involved in that in some way, shape, or form. I may be meeting some of these guys when they come out of prison. And that's something that he used to do. He was serving as a chaplain. I said, brother, that was the most exciting thing that I saw in a long time, and I want to do that. I want to meet some of these guys when they come out of prison and help them get back on their feet. And that program, he was a part of it. It got shut down. But the reality is that is a huge need. So that's something I'm praying through. But again, if I try to approach hey, everybody, this is what we're going to do. We're going to reach. Well, somebody just has to start doing it like Whitfield. And that's the way the kingdom of God has kind of worked. It's how my life has worked. It's how missions work with me. I can't sit in a room and us make these elaborate, funky plans and then go try to do it. Normally, it's just somebody's doing it. And other people go, hey, I want to be a part of that, or I want to fall in.
Why did that prison program close down?
It was something to do. It was a subcontracted group of people, and something, I can't remember what it was, but something went wrong. There was a falling out between the authorities and the subcontractors. I can't remember what it was, but there was, I think the guys that subcontracted, they had a conflict with their boss. And then because they had the relationship with the prison, but the business had the contract, it shut down. There was a parting of ways. So, and it just ended it.
Yeah, that's too bad.
So, yeah, it was, man. And it was really cool. I was like, wow, man, this is amazing. You're involved in this. So, it's something that we're going to be, kind of revisiting and saying, hey, how do we, kind of see something like that get set up again,
Cool. Well, let me know how I can help on that.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Well, hey, we're at the end of our time, aren't we?
Yes, we are.
Well, guys, while you're doing all that public work outside, and guys, by the way, you should be doing something. If you're in ministry and you're not doing something, whether it's attending AA, I mean, these are all no-brainers, right? Just going to AA and being a support to people. Joining, you could join a reading group in Barnes and I mean, there's all kinds of things you could be doing right now. But the no-brainers, like I said, are the ones where Jesus mentions and he tells us, he goes, these are the things that I want to see you doing. But if you're not doing those things, start praying about that and asking God, hey, what one would be right? Which one sparks me? Or is there something kind of like these that's not mentioned here, but somehow really teaching kids to read? Whitfield mentioned poor kids. Maybe you're like, hey, there's kids that, like the police told a friend of mine that help kids read, because if kids don't read by second grade, they got a life of crime ahead of them. We need kids at 8 years old to be able to read. If you're going to focus on one thing, church, do that. That was in Long Beach. Larry Wackemeyer, who's on the exponential team. And they did that, and they've seen their church seen so many conversions, so many relationships. So guys, that's what I'm trying to throw out there today is get out there. Think of Whitfield, think of these guys, get out there, get out from behind your desk. You're never going to change the world from behind your desk, like I said, in reaching the unreached. Cha-ching! But while you're doing all that, reaching the unreached, cha-ching.
Let me ask you, Peyton.
Yeah, this is what I was going for.
While we're doing all that to reach the unreached, who's going to help you with all of that stress that you get from running a church, like the bookkeeping? I can't even say it. It's so bad.
Oh, I'm so glad you asked that, Pete.
Keeping the taxes. I mean, right now it's tax season. You got to send out all these, tax return stuff. How do you do it?
It's so good that you asked that question. I've been dying to tell you about SimplifyChurch.com.
What is this magical company?
SimplifyChurch.com. What they do is they help you do your bookkeeping. They help you stay compliant with the IRS. They do into your tax receipts. Not too late. They do all the things that you need so you can keep your mind on getting out there and helping people.
It's magic.
And all you got to do, Pete, to sign up is go to SimplifyChurch.com and tell them Peyton and Pete sent you.
What?
SimplifyChurch.com. Well, guys, this has been our podcast today. This has been Peyton Jones and Pete Mitchell reminding you, if you want to reach the ones nobody's reaching, you need to go where nobody's going and do what nobody's doing.
Uh-oh.
Thanks for joining us for another weekly episode of the Church Planter Podcast with Pete Mitchell and Peyton Jones. We'd love to hear your comments on this episode of the Church Planter Podcast. Visit us online and let us know what you thought at churchplanterpodcast.com. If you subscribe to us via iTunes and have enjoyed the podcast, leave us a positive review. The more positive reviews we receive in iTunes, the more iTunes will promote us to other church planners who would benefit from this show. This podcast is brought to you by the Church Planter Magazine, which is available in the iTunes newsstand or online via churchplantermagazine.com.